Number 10. Green Arrow. Now I'm sure we all know who Green Arrow is, so I won't dive too deep into his backstory, but I will give you a little taste just in case you're not super familiar. Now Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow, is a vigilante superhero who fights crime in his home of Star City, using archery, martial arts, and technology. Not to mention by day he is also a wealthy playboy and billionaire industrialist turned outspoken socially progressive politician. Honestly, just think Batman but way less sad and with arrows. Needless to say, he is a good superhero and unfortunately he met an untimely end back in 1995. Here's how that story played out. The Russians planned on planting a bomb that releases a bacteria that would destroy millions of buildings in Metropolis, killing all of the people inside of them. The bomb works when two people put their hands on the detonator. While the bomb is in transit on a plane, for some reason Green Arrow put his arm on the detonator knowing that if he removes his arm, the bomb would explode. Superman showed up and suggested that they would just cut off the appendage with his heat vision, but Oliver for some reason refused. In the end, the bomb went off and Green Arrow became, well, no more. Check it out for yourself in 1995's Green Arrow number 99 all the way to 101.
Number 10. Quicksilver. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Quicksilver was introduced and killed off in the same movie. In Age of Ultron, we meet Pietro and his sister Wanda, who received their powers through experimentation. While Quicksilver is a mainstay in the comics and fairly well known, and is also a popular character, often considered one of the fastest former mutants around, though maybe not quite as fast as Northstar, his long time standing as Wanda's sassy twin brother did not protect him in the MCU. Quicksilver was taken out by a hail of bullets that he couldn't run fast enough to stop. Instead of allowing the bullets to hit their targets, which would have been the very mortal Hawkeye and an innocent Sokovian child, he instead sacrificed himself and died. This is why the Avengers need a healer in their party, I'm just saying. Number 9. Bucky Barnes. But this time we are talking about Bucky Barnes as Captain America. Bucky was currently standing in as Cap during the Fear Itself event, and it was during a fight with Sin, who is currently Scotty at the time, that Barnes seemed to pass away. The passing was tragic, dramatic, and unexpected. Of course, we would learn in later issues of the Fear Itself main event series that Bucky was actually saved by Nick Fury's Infinity Formula, which revived him, and as such he was not in fact dead. But he decided to keep his resurrection a secret, letting everyone else believe he was dead, going underground for a time and returning once more to his Winter Soldier mantle. At least he had Black Widow to keep him company. Number 8. Hank Pym. While we all expected that Ultron would be the downfall of Hank, as the AI was likely one of his biggest mistakes and probably one of his biggest regrets, we were still caught off guard when we realized the Hank Pym we'd known had ceased to exist after merging with Ultron. Originally during the Rage of Ultron story, when these two merged, it was thought that Hank still existed within the being known as Ultron Pym's consciousness. This was also after he'd just returned. Hank had actually been believed dead in a previous event when facing the enemy known as the Beyonders, but it seemed Hank returned only to die again while facing Ultron, dying the moment he was forced to merge with his creation. What's even more surprising is he hasn't been seen since, and it's been like 5 years, so there's a good chance that this death could remain permanent. Number 7. Green Arrow. During the CW-verse Infinite Crisis event, Green Arrow died sooner than expected, shocking fans. Fans of the Arrowverse likely expected the death would be coming at them, as it had been foreshadowed previously, but what they didn't expect was that Oliver Queen, played by Stephen Amell, would die so soon into the event. He died within the first part of the event, shocking many. The fact that the death came as a surprise was just what the network wanted. Fans expected Oliver Queen to die, they reasoned, so why not catch them off guard with their timing? And so they did just that. I mean, it was also just shocking in general that they decided to kill off and end the show that started the CW/DC verse, the Arrowverse, which is still going on and is still often referred to as the Arrowverse, despite Arrow ending, but I guess they had a good 8-season run. Number 6. Batman. Usually when Batman dies, it's in a way that seems very non-final. He'll fall into a pit or go MIA and be presumed dead, or he'll get terribly injured, but manage to recover somehow. When you compare his standard deaths to the one that he suffered in Final Crisis, it's easy to understand why it appeared to be so shocking. In Final Crisis, he was basically mummified by Darkseid, who attacked Batman with his Omega beams after Batman managed to wound him. It was bad. Superman managed to recover Bruce's body, which basically just looked like a skeleton. This was Batman at his most dead. The most dead I feel like that we'd seen maybe ever, leaving people to wonder how Batman would even recover from this. Of course, sure as the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, he did return, though the explanation for him returning was so bad and strange. It was almost more shocking than his death. Number 5. Hulk. In Civil War II, Bruce Banner and the Hulk were put to rest for good. Bruce no longer wanted to be plagued by his Hulk form and so took a few measures to make sure this would never happen again. After Amadeus Cho helped his friend Banner by taking away his burden and transferring all Bruce's gamma radiation into himself. To make sure that he never again transformed into the big green giant, Bruce had an arrowhead constructed made of gamma-enriched vibranium, basically making his own version of a silver bullet. He entrusted the arrowhead to his friend and teammate Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye. Although Banner had not turned green or had an episode in some time, when Inhuman Ulysses predicted that it would come to pass and would cause massive deaths, Hawkeye did not hesitate and swiftly executed Bruce before he had a chance to transform. Of course, it's probably them chasing him down and trying to catch him that made him transform in the first place, so that prediction, who knows. However, this was the end of the Incredible Hulk, but it would lead to the beginning of the Immortal Hulk that everyone has come to love. Number 4. Kitty Pryde. Captain Kate, as she currently prefers to be called, or I guess I should say preferred, recently had a very shocking end to her character. What's more, although all mutants can pretty much return whenever needed due to the 5 merging their powers to resurrect any fallen mutant, Captain Kate has not even been able to set foot on Krakoa, which for some reason doesn't seem to recognize her as a mutant, cutting her off from her friends. During Marauders, Kate was betrayed by none other than Sebastian Shaw, and it was revealed that, like the Portals, Kate was unable to phase through Krakoan plant life, leaving her and Lockheed swimming with the fishes, Kate appearing to drown while tangled up in Krakoan roots, and leaving fans wondering when or if they'd ever see her return. Number 3. Cable. In a surprising turn of events, Cable killed Cable during the miniseries Extermination. The death of older Cable came about when both he and young Cable disagreed on how best to avoid a catastrophic future event. Older Cable aimed to avoid the catastrophic future by showing the younger X-Men responsible the error of their ways, whereas younger Cable believed they just needed to be straight up eliminated to prevent the events from taking place. Young Cable believed his older self had become weak and soft, and so killed him. It was also pretty crazy that the issue in which old Cable died was also the issue in which young Cable first appeared, though we wouldn't actually even find out till the end of the issue that old Cable's murderer was actually his younger self, leaving many fans shocked that a younger Cable was appearing to take the place of the established, grizzled, and well-loved older version. People are still, I feel like, kind of shocked by it. Even today. Number 2. Black Widow. There was a point when I definitely saw this death running headlong at us, but I was hoping, like almost everyone, that there could be another way. Please, there's gotta be another way! Of course, there wasn't. In the MCU, Black Widow chose to sacrifice herself in order to recover the Soul Stone, which the Avengers needed to rebuild the Infinity Gauntlet, reverse the effects of the snap, and save basically 50% of the universe, including their other colleagues, friends, and fellow heroes who had perished. We knew something would have to be sacrificed to get that Soul Stone, because we saw that before. We knew it was coming, and yet it still didn't hurt or surprise us any less when it did. Especially considering that it seems like this is a permadeath for Black Widow in the MCU, and that there will be likely no way of bringing her back. She died before she even got her own movie. That's pretty shocking. Number 1. Wasp. A lot of deaths in Ultimatum were shocking, mostly because they were so permanent, but also because a lot of them were pretty gruesome. We talked about another of Janet Van Dyne's death on part 1 of this list from the main continuity, but the one from the Ultimate line, more specifically Ultimatum, was one of her most shocking deaths ever because of how gruesome it was. Here, Janet dies and then is eaten by the Blob. And just FYI, it wasn't like she was small at the time and he like just accidentally swallowed her or something. This was gruesome. Like, I'm gonna eat you life-size type of thing. Like, I'm gonna literally, your guts, or you know what I mean. One of the reasons why Ultimates existed, of course, was to be the darker, more shocking alternate world to Marvel's usually more bright and optimistic main continuity, so I guess they succeeded there. Number 10. Ant-Man. After Brian Michael Bendis took over the Avengers, he decided to shake things up a bit in order to create a new main roster for the team with the Avengers Disassembled story. In this story, we saw the Avengers mansion and many teammates killed when the corpse of Jack of Hearts shows up at the mansion randomly, urging the Avengers that he brings a message of warning. Scott Lang moves towards Jack just as he explodes, destroying the mansion and killing Lang. We later learned that this was all Scarlet Witch's doing, who at the time was beginning to lose her grip on reality due to her famous psychotic break, which of course would later lead to the events of House of M and later on M-Day. Number 9. The Wasp. Near the end of Secret Invasion, Janet Van Dyne was taken out, and of course no one was expecting that as it was near the end of the event, and all in all it was kinda random. It's revealed in issue 8 of Secret Invasion that Janet herself was turned into a biological weapon by the Skrulls, who were able to get her a new growth hormone posed as a gift from Hank Pym. But of course it wasn't Hank, it was a Skrull disguised as Hank. Janet obviously took this new growth hormone, which she was told would allow her to turn from giant size to microscopic like that. What it truly did was turn her into a giant biological weapon, attacking everyone around her, Skrull and human alike, until she finally began to shrink down and she died. Number 8. Hellcat. A pretty crazy turn of events led to Patsy Walker's death in the 90s, when comics was pretty much nothing but a crazy turn of events. After seeing the darkness of her husband Damon Hellstrom's soul, or Hellstorm as he was known then, Patsy was driven insane. She became a shadow of her former self, rail thin and babbling non-stop about Damon at all hours. Meanwhile, in Hellstorm Prince of Lies issue 14, Damon seems to be off having a fine old time while this is going on. In the end, Patsy's desperation to be at peace brought a being known as Death Urge to her. This being was there to help Patsy pass, which apparently was what she wanted. He kills her pretty gruesomely by driving a spike through the back of her head. Yikes. And she has to go fight people in hell for a bit. That's how it goes. Number 7. War Machine. During the events of Civil War II, we all knew we were going to need a catalyst for the war, but I don't think anyone would have expected that it would be War Machine's death that would have got us there. During a conflict with Thanos that Ulysses the Inhuman predicted, Rhodey died. A single and brutally direct punch from Thanos was all it took. Even with his armor, War Machine didn't stand a chance. At this time, he was dating Captain Marvel, and Carol, believing his death could have been avoided, started to try and get people to listen to Ulysses' visions and react before their events could come about. Whereas Tony Stark cautioned against trusting the visions and suggested they simply react to events as they happened. This is what basically started the war, and while many were surprised and sad at Rhodey's death, fortunately he would later come back to life following Tony Stark's own resurrection from a comatose state following the conflict. Number 6. She-Hulk. Recently in Empire number 4, She-Hulk was revealed to have actually died back in Empire 1. In Empire issue number 1, Shulky is given a hammer by the alien plant race of the Kotati. The hammer is said in combination with Kotati meditation techniques to help She-Hulk channel her rage, restoring her brilliant mind to her. How nice, you might think. But we later learn that the Kotati are actually the bad guys in this situation, and it's later revealed during her off-panel adventure where she's supposedly given this hammer and taught techniques that she was actually killed by the Kotati so they could use her body as a weapon and as their own vessel. She transforms into a plant monster, and in a flashback we witness Jennifer Walters' fate as it's quickly summed up that yes, she died. What was so shocking about this death was that it was kinda just skipped right over. We learn of the death and then it's kinda on to the next thing. Like, it's no big deal. Making you wonder if you really read what you just think you read. But yeah, you definitely did. Number 5. A Death in the Family. You might be thinking, but wait a minute, shouldn't we have seen this one coming at least? During the unfolding of a story involving Jason Todd's Robin leaving Batman's side and searching to find his birth mother, writers at DC allowed the fans to decide Todd's fate. Jason Todd had proved to be more unpopular in his role as Robin in comparison to the former Robin, Dick Grayson, and writers figured they'd let the fans decide whether Jason Todd remained as a character or was permanently wiped out. Killed. In the end, the votes were close, but the majority said that Jason Todd should perish. So, he did. What shocked many fans is that DC actually followed through, and this death was also pretty gruesome. Apparently, many fans who actually had voted thought it was a ruse, and so had not put too much consideration into their vote, assuming DC would never actually follow through with it. Letting the fate of Todd be decided by a fan poll even shocked Frank Miller, who commented that he thought it was the most cynical thing DC had ever done.
Number 9. Rorschach's death. In the last issue of the original Watchmen limited series entitled A Strong and Loving World, we get a truly shocking reveal. Ozymandias was actually the bad guy all along. Turns out he was responsible for the death of thousands in New York, the death of the comedian, the accusations on Dr. Manhattan, and the framing of Moloch. Sure, that's shocking to say the least, but there's actually a lot more, as is what happens after that's truly shocking. Now, don't get me wrong, Ozymandias' intentions were good. He did all that he could to prevent a nuclear war between the Soviet Union and the US. But it was still an injustice for Rorschach, and he wanted to expose Ozymandias. Setting out to do so, Rorschach encounters Dr. Manhattan and tells him what's actually happening. Dr. Manhattan tried to stop Rorschach from exposing Ozymandias, but Rorschach responded by saying that Manhattan had to kill him to stop him. In a shocking turn of events, Dr. Manhattan actually did so and vaporized Rorschach and chose to believe in Ozymandias' cause instead of anything else. Now, if you haven't already read this limited series, I highly recommend that you go back and check it out, starting with 1986's Watchmen, number 1. Number 8. Sue Dibny's death. Now this sad death takes place during the Identity Crisis storyline, and it's actually what sets it all in motion. Now if you're not familiar with Identity Crisis, it's basically a love story wrapped inside a murder mystery, with a concerted effort to bring a real-world crime and quote-unquote darkness to all of the Justice League. Now it all starts with, like I said, the death of Sue Dibny, the elongated man's wife, and from there it just spirals into a story of lines being crossed by both supervillains and heroes. Addressing heavy topics like forced mind wiping, the story made some readers pretty uncomfortable to say the least, and when all was said and done, the family members of a few heroes were dead and the reputations of others were completely tarnished in brand new ways. It's eventually realized by Dr. Midnight, Mr. Terrific, and Batman, all separately I might say, that Sue was murdered using some pretty familiar technology. However, it wasn't done by someone that we would expect. Now if you don't want to hear this, I will say cover your ears, but honestly you probably already know this by now, the murderer was Jean Loring, the wife of the Atom who was committed to Arkham Asylum after she was discovered. Now there are definitely two viewings of Identity Crisis. One is a dark tragedy reflective of the real world that we all live in now, and one is a tenaciously destructive tentacle of the Watchmen squid monster, still sort of wriggling around 15 years later. But I've only seen the former, but if you do see the latter, let me know in the comments below. Now if you haven't read it and want to give it a go, check out 2004's Identity Crisis number 1 all the way to 2005's Identity Crisis number 7. Number 7. Barry Allen's death. First of all, I just want to get it out there that the Crisis on Infinite Earths event is absolutely insane, and if you're not familiar with it, you should 1000% give it all a read. Put simply, it was an attempt to reboot the entire DC universe because everything had become a bit too confusing, and obviously DC's way of doing that was to just get rid of the multiverse and many of its characters, one of which being Barry Allen. Near the end of the event, Barry made the ultimate sacrifice by literally running himself to death in order to save countless lives. What he did is, in order to put a stop to the Anti-Monitor's plan to destroy the world with his antimatter cannon, Barry ran so fast that he created a speed vortex that would absorb the power of the cannon, but he ended up dying in the process. For years, the character remained dead, leaving the mantle to Wally West, the original Kid Flash, to serve as the Scarlet Speedster in his stead. Eventually, this story was retconned and it was revealed that Barry didn't actually die. But back in the day, this supposed death really hit home, and that's why it deserves a spot on this list today. Check it out for yourself in 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 8. Number 6. Supergirl's death. Now remember how I just said Crisis on Infinite Earths was an absolutely insane storyline and killed a ton of heroes? Well, sadly among those ranks was also Supergirl, losing her life one issue before Barry loses his. Now like I said before, the storyline was all about simplifying the DC universe and having it go back to its roots. And since there was originally only one Kryptonian on Earth, that meant Kara had to go. I'm glad to say though that the character was at least able to go out like a hero as she battled it out with the Anti-Monitor, who kept hitting her with lethal doses of his energy. She kept on fighting though until a lethal blow sadly took her out. Like the true hero she is, she sacrificed her life for her cousin Superman and died in his arms. Later we see Superman leave his Fortress of Solitude with the body of Supergirl wrapped in her indestructible cape, and he sets her free in space, promising to remember and miss her forever. Although this death was not as impactful as Barry's, I would argue that Supergirl's was much more shocking, as it was much more immediate than Barry's. Readers actually got to spend a few moments with Barry despite actually knowing that he was gonna die, while Kara's kinda just came straight out of left field. Check it out for yourself in 1985's Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 7. Number 5. Ted Kord's death. In the pages of Countdown to Infinite Crisis, the second Blue Beetle, Ted Kord, is left near bankruptcy after funds from his company were mysteriously stolen. His investigation into his missing fortune leads him to something much darker though. A conspiracy to wipe out the superhuman community orchestrated by the Justice League International's former manager, Maxwell Lord. Lord had definitely enjoyed his influence over the Justice League and the formation of Justice League International in the wake of Crisis on Infinite Earths. I mean, he was a wealthy and powerful businessman who claimed to have learned nobility and compassion from his late father, Maxwell Lord III. All of this pointed to him as a very genuine figure out to keep Earth safe, but I guess we were wrong because during the Invasion saga, Lord acquires the superpower of mind control, and things only got worse from there. The build up to Infinite Crisis saw many shocking events occur in the DC universe, including Lord's brutal murder of Ted Kord. Lord's betrayal didn't even end there, as he continued to damage the League throughout the Infinite Crisis. Thankfully, Wonder Woman straight up just murders him after he mind controls Superman into assaulting his fellow Leaguers, snapping his neck, which was also super shocking, so I guess this point is kind of a twofer. Check out this death in 2005's Countdown to Infinite Crisis, number 1. Number 4. Superman's death. Wonder Woman Dead Earth. This Wonder Woman storyline follows Wonder Woman being accidentally awakened by a group of survivors from a centuries-long sleep at the Batcave. Diana discovers the Earth has been reduced to a nuclear wasteland and is infected by mutated insectoid creatures. Now what does this have to do with Superman, you ask? Well, in issue 3 of this miniseries, Diana and Cheetah head to the Fortress of Solitude to see if Superman is still alive and well and can help them protect the people of Earth. Upon entering the fortress, they are greeted by robot Superman, and Diana gets quite the shock to say the least when she sees Superman dead on his throne. And it only gets worse from there because it turns out she was the one who killed him. Flashback all those years ago to that huge war, and we see the US release a full armada of missiles against all of the Amazonians. Clark knew they were going to be targeting Smallville as well, so he went to go protect his family, which left Wonder Woman to defend Paradise Island alone. Now there were far too many missiles and her home wound up being destroyed. She completely lost it and started pummeling Superman, ending his life with a punch straight through his chest. Now the way that this was drawn is absolutely beautiful, so check it out for yourself in 2020's Wonder Woman Dead Earth number 3. Number 3. Alex Dewitt. For so many heroes, one of their biggest fears is that their secret identity will get out and put their loved ones at risk. So generally they do anything and everything that they can in order to prevent that from happening. In Kyle Rayner's case, he learned the hard way what happens if you're not careful enough. After taking over the Green Lantern mantle from Hal Jordan and receiving his power ring, Rayner seeks out his girlfriend Alexandra, or Alex DeWitt. DeWitt wasn't sure what to make of the new power Rayner had acquired, but eventually she decided to help Rayner control and understand the potential power he had command over. Probably not the best idea because he came home one day and found out that she had been killed by the supervillain Major Force and had been stuffed into a refrigerator. Kyle, obviously upset and motivated by anger and regret, sought out Major Force. Kyle almost killed Major Force before his ring runs out of power. Major Force then takes over the fight until his green rocks that powers the power rings turns into a lantern battery and charges Rayner's ring back up. Rayner finally subdues Major Force, but when he begins to interrogate Major Force over why he was there and why he killed DeWitt, the police arrived and tried to take Rayner away. Now Rayner obviously flees and runs into Alan Scott, who tries to console him over his loss. DC writer Gail Simone, now a legend in her own right, was absolutely horrified that the company consented to kill a female character and in such a gruesome way, merely to motivate the male protagonist. That's when she coined the term women in refrigerators for any time women in comics were killed, seriously injured, sexually violated, or depowered merely to motivate male heroes. And she published a long list of such cases, so go check it out for yourself. Now check out her death for yourself in 1994's Green Lantern Volume 3, number 55. Number 2. Jason Todd's death. The death of Jason Todd was so surprising that it not only shocked readers, it shocked DC themselves. Now the character had a pretty weird history as he was introduced as a new teenage Robin after Dick Grayson grew up and became Nightwing, but fans weren't really too keen on him. In 1988, DC Comics writer Denny O'Neil pitched the idea to make the readers vote via 1-900 numbers on how a story should end, and O'Neil knew that the vote couldn't be on something tiny or small, so he decided that the vote would be about the fate of Jason Todd. Knowing that Todd was relatively unpopular, it seemed like the right thing to do to help settle what needed to be done with the character. Setting up a 36-hour voting period, readers got one of two numbers to call from the back of Batman number 427. The ending of that issue showed us the Joker beating Todd with a crowbar, leaving him in a warehouse that was set to explode. Then issue number 428 came out and the final vote was 5,343 for killing Jason Todd and 5,271 against killing him, meaning that his fate was kinda sealed. Jason Todd was dead, and the iconic image of Batman carrying Todd's dead body that followed was one that is still recognizable to pretty much everyone today. Now, years after the event, O'Neil revealed that there was someone who programmed their phone to call every 90 seconds for 8 hours. That person chose the same option every time, for Jason Todd to die. Totaling around 320 votes from that one person alone, O'Neil has gone on record saying that that one person is the entire reason that Jason Todd died. So I guess they're also the reason that we have the Red Hood, so thank you? I don't know. If you're not familiar with this storyline, aka a death in the family, check it out for yourself starting with 1988's Batman Volume 1, number 426, all the way to 429. Number 1. Death of Superman. Now of course, we have to talk about this one, we can't not. In 1992, the writers of the Superman titles had had enough of the Man of Steel and decided to just straight up kill him. Okay, not really. In response to not being able to do their original story, which was to have Lois Lane and Clark Kent get married, due to all the conflicts with the then upcoming Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman, the writers were racking their brain trying to figure out what to do, and they ultimately landed on this storyline. The way they pulled this off was they introduced a new character, an almost unthinkable monster whose only purpose was to destroy things. Known as Doomsday, this monster caused some serious destruction towards Metropolis. Jump forward a little bit to 1993 and we see Superman take on this unstoppable bad guy. Obviously Superman was able to take him down because you know, he's Superman. But both Doomsday and Superman ended up succumbing to their injuries at the end of the fight. Now, while some superheroes have been resurrected multiple times, this was the very first time that Clark Kent had bit the dust, and it sent shockwaves through the entire world of DC Comics. The aftermath of the story followed how the world reacted and who showed up to take its place, the latter part featuring the introduction of several new characters who stuck around to help later form the DCEU. Death of Superman is one of the most far-reaching media events in comics history, and to this day it still stands as such, and that coupled with the return of Superman changed the rules for DC, opening the door for anyone to come back to life. So check out the storyline for yourself so you can see firsthand exactly what this death meant to the DC universe, starting with 1992 Superman, The Man of Steel Volume 1, number 18.
Number 4. Heroes in Crisis. One of the more shocking superhero deaths to happen recently in DC was a massacre at the superhero mental rehabilitation center, The Sanctuary. This happened in the limited comic book series Heroes in Crisis. Many lost their lives in the massacre, including Roy Harper and reformed Poison Ivy. What was more shocking was when we learned that another superhero was responsible for the deaths, although the massacre for them was not intentional. Originally, the murderer was actually believed to be either Booster Gold or Harley Quinn, but it was later revealed that Wally West, who was also one of the suspected dead at the time, was the one responsible, and that his trauma had caused him to lose control of the Speed Force, which caused the energy blast that killed everyone. Number 3. Bucky Barnes. I don't think anyone would have expected Captain America's sidekick Bucky to have been killed, especially because originally in the continuity he wasn't. Both he and Cap had continued to fight on after the war, but it was later retconned that this wasn't actually the true heroic duo, and that they had actually gone missing during the end of World War II. Cap was then recovered, but we would later learn via flashbacks to World War II events of Bucky's death, and how he had gone MIA while he was working with Cap. Bucky's suspected death was a surprising revelation and became known as one of the irreversible deaths in comics. That is until the early 2000s when Ed Brubaker, in another shocking twist, brought Bucky back, revealing he'd been alive this whole time, and giving us the brilliant Winter Soldier. While the death of kid sidekick Bucky Barnes was shocking, discovering he was actually alive was even more so. Number 2. Death of Wolverine. While we knew that Wolverine's healing factor was beginning to fade due to a viral infection that was plaguing Logan, he was also one of Marvel's most popular characters. Wolverine was such a big character at this point in 2014 after years of being one of the most iconic X-Men and tons of animated and live-action films only adding to his popularity. No one expected that Marvel would actually want to wish him ill. And yet, in September of 2014, the death of Wolverine began, which saw Wolverine hunted down by his enemies thanks to a bounty that had been placed on his head by Viper. In the end, it's actually revealed that the founder of Weapon X, Dr. Abraham Cornelius, is behind the plot to capture Wolverine. During the fight with Cornelius, Wolverine finds himself covered in liquid adamantium. This hardens around him, and due to his healing factor not working at the time, he suffocates and dies. Number 1. Death of Superman. The Death of Superman was a crossover story that was meant to shock readers and show them that the invincible Superman they'd come to know over the years wasn't quite as invincible as they maybe thought. Death of Superman was an event that began near the end of 1992 and took place over the course of what was almost a full year in real time, ending in October 1993. The idea for the story involving Superman's death actually came out of a passing joke. While brainstorming ideas for replacement stories for the story of Lois and Clark getting married, which DC decided to postpone, Jerry Ordway suggested they should just kill him. Sales for the Superman series had actually recently begun to drop off, and this joke quickly became the replacement plot for the wedding story, hoping it would remind people of Superman's importance.